Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Timey-Wimey Tuesday, and the next exciting installment in the Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation. So today we reach the end of an era with the 1980 to 1981 season. Basically Tom Baker's final season. Yes, we've reached the 7th season of the 4th Doctor, his final bow as the Doctor. And boy, is it ever the time for change. There's a lot of changes that took place in this season, not the least of which, of course, was the regeneration at the end of it. But pretty cool stuff. Got a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. The Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation, Season 18, from 1980 to 1981, today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Okay, so this season marked definitely the beginning of a new era for the series. Not the least of which we saw at the very beginning of the first episode of the season, in which we got a whole new title sequence. Just this amazing spacescape title sequence. Really amazing compositing and lighting effects and animation effects. Just a spectacular title sequence. We got the new neon tubing logo, which you just saw in the titles there, and we got a whole new version of the theme song. Actually, the first completely new, completely different version of the theme song that we had ever in the history of the series. Now, back in the 70s, during John Pertwee's era, there was briefly an attempt to do a new version of the theme, but quite frankly, it was horrible, and they wisely opted not to go with that version of the theme. It did make it on the air for a couple of episodes. I think an episode or two of The Claws of Axos, I believe, had it, but and you can find it on the on one of the DVDs as well. But yeah, it doesn't. But it was amazing to hear this suddenly this new, different, more modernized version of the theme, and it's a really, really good version of the theme too. Oddly, it's in a slightly different key than the original, but man, what a great version! It's one of my favorite versions of the theme song, next to the original. In fact, I might even say it is my favorite version of the theme song. Yeah, I went there. Alrighty, so let's take a look. What do we got? This season also marks the debut season for the final producer of the original series. This producer would actually stay on all the way through to the final season in 1989, namely Mr. John Nathan Turner. Now, fan opinion of John Nathan Turner is very divided, very split. Honestly, I mean, I've seen a ton of interviews with him, and I get the impression that he genuinely loved and cared about the show. And to be fair, there was a lot of pressure from the BBC throughout his era to, to keep the show fresh and exciting and stuff. And I think he did. He had a lot on his plate to deal with. Now, I do understand he could be a little difficult to work with sometimes, a little bit demanding and whatnot. But I got to give credit where credit's due, and he really pulled out all the stops and did what he could to update the show and to modernize it for the times, and try to keep it fresh and exciting and interesting. And some of the stuff he did maybe didn't work as well as others, but his initial season, Tom Baker's last, I think overall is quite good, and there's a lot of good stuff to be found here. So we start off with story number 110, continuing the story from the numbering from the unfinished story Shadow, which we talked about last time. We have the Leisure Hive, where right from this very first story, you can see that the show is going in a much more up-to-date, modernized kind of direction. The production value seems to be a lot higher. It immediately takes place on an alien planet, in this case sort of a pleasure planet, like a resort planet. and there's some sinister goings on there, and and just some really cool video effects and whatnot. They were really playing around with the blue screen a lot more in this, a lot more than we had seen quite a lot of it back in the early 70s episodes, and they kind of went away from it for a little while and just kind of used it sparingly. Here we get into a lot more in-camera video effects and whatnot, and some of them were quite cool, I have to say. So anyway, the Leisure Hive is quite a fun story. I always liked this one, and I found I've actually come to appreciate it more as it has aged and as I have aged. But quite good indeed. Then next up we have Meglos. Yes. Now this was kind of a notable story in terms of effects, because they had actually tried out for the first time this kind of motion tracking thing where they could actually match the movements of, doing, say, a panning shot across a model shot, and then having actors blue screened into it, and having the camera on the actors match the motion of the camera tracking across the model shot. So you could actually have panning shots of actors on blue screen in front of models, and it really gave it a much more again, much better production value, because that's a very complex thing to do, especially back in 1980. So it was pretty cool. This is also a notable story in that we have Jacqueline Pierce come back. Jacqueline Pierce, who played Barbara, one of the very first companions ever. This is her final appearance in the series before she passed away a few years later. But she actually plays one of the primary villains in this, which is pretty cool to see her. And boy, did she ever age gracefully. She's still stunningly beautiful in this. I always really liked Barbara as a character, and Jacqueline Pierce as an actress. Just a beautiful, beautiful woman. So, so we got Meglos, which is basically, again, takes place on an alien planet. In this case, you got some space pirates, and you got this cactus alien who's got his own evil plans, and even he's able to impersonate the Doctor, so you have like the cactus version of the Doctor. Really crazy stuff going on here, but again, I really like this one as well. And this, of course, is story number 111. So there we go. Next up, we have actually an epic trilogy of stories. These are not available individually. They're only available in this trilogy set. When I first ordered this, I thought it was going to be another box set, like, the Dalek War or Key to Time or something like that. But actually, it just comes in a regular keep case. It's a 3 discs set. There we go. All very nice. And this is what's referred to as the E-space Trilogy. Basically, due to a cosmic mishap, the Doctor's TARDIS gets pulled into E-space, which is kind of like a parallel universe. And, has various adventures there. The first story in this Full Circle is notable in that it was actually written by a fan and made into a series, made into one of the stories, which is pretty cool. I guess it was submitted by a fan, and they liked it, so then they actually hired him to write the script for it, which is pretty cool. I always liked Full Circle. I know fans are kind of mixed on it, but I always enjoyed it. There's just something about it that I really liked. It's got kind of a nice little underlying message of don't judge things too soon, because things may not be as they seem. Very cool. And then we have State of Decay, which is great. Space vampires. Need I say more? Yes, we got honest-to-goodness space vampires in this. And it's just got this wonderful sort of sci-fi gothic vibe to the whole thing. It's quite good. And then finally we have Warrior's Gate, which is kind of a trippy story about mishaps in time and space. And the Doctor, it's called the E-space Trilogy because these 3 stories take place in this parallel universe, and the Doctor's trying to figure out a way to get back to normal space. And so Warrior's Gate introduces these aliens, kind of reminiscent of the Thundercats. Actually, they're these cat people that have the ability to navigate through different universes and stuff like that. So it's possible that they may be able to get their help to get back to their normal universe. And Romana, good old Romana, actually departs at the end of that story, sadly. So we bid adieu to Romana 2, so very sad. I should mention a little behind the scenes thing. Tom Baker and Lala Ward actually fell in love and got married thanks to the show here, so very cool. There was a number of news stories about it at the time. There was one I remember had the headline of Dr. Woo! So, yeah, kind of cheesy, but that's the popular press for you. And Full Circle actually introduced Adric, who is a companion that fans are very divided on. I always liked him because he kind of reminded me of me in a way. He was like this young boy. He was a little bit older than I was at the time when I was watching these episodes, and I guess for me, it was kind of like I was seeing me on the TARDIS if I was a little whinier. I never really had a big problem with Adric. I didn't. I know a lot of fans do, but whatever. Get over it. So this is stories 112, 113, and 114. And there we go. So very, very cool. So you can get 3 nice little trilogy of stories right there in one nice little set. And next up we have, this is the beginning of another trilogy, actually. We kind of got 2 trilogies back to back here. This particular trilogy leads into the introduction of the next Doctor, which we'll get to shortly. We have story number 115, The Keeper of Traken. Now this is really good stuff. This is a really good story. It's got some great cliffhangers, a great villain, and we have the return of the Master. Yes, for the first time since what was it? The Deadly Assassin. Yeah, we haven't seen him since the Deadly Assassin, several seasons back, where he was very decrepit and such. So this is the story where the Master figures out a way to get a new body, because he's at the end of his regenerations. He's used them all up. He doesn't have any left. He can't regenerate. So in this one, he finds another way to get a fresh new body. And then we are introduced to the Master as played by the wonderful Anthony Ainley. Not easy to follow in Roger Delgado's footsteps, but I gotta say Anthony Ainley did a pretty damn good job. He was a pretty good Master. Definitely a force to be reckoned with, and quite a menace for the Doctor. So the Keeper of Traken introduces the new Master. Also introduces Nyssa, who would later become a part of the TARDIS crew. And there we go. So we got just a disc there. Lots of extras, of course, as usual. Very, very nice. And there we go. And finally, last but most certainly not least, we have the 4th Doctor's final story, Logopolis. Yes, which is about this planet that uses what they call block transfer computation, and it's basically the premise that math runs the universe, and the universe is sort of held together from this planet, Logopolis. And the math that they do there day in, day out, their little huts with their little abacuses, actually help to keep the universe safe and, from falling apart. The Master, of course, shows up and starts wreaking havoc, and the entire universe is in peril. So, the Doctor saves the day, but at the cost of his own life. Yes, after a final tussle with the Master, he is mortally wounded and has no choice but to regenerate. And then that is the end of the 4th Doctor, and a very, very sad end it is, too. We have, I should mention also, this story introduces Tegan, the Australian air hostess with an attitude. Yes, so here we have the introduction of Adric, the introduction of Nyssa, the introduction of Tegan, and then we've got the full crew of TARDIS companions. Nyssa becomes a regular in Logopolis as well. She comes back for that story. Originally, she was just supposed to be a one-off character, but they liked her so much they decided to bring her back for Logopolis. Both Nyssa and Adric are very smart. Adric has a gold star for mathematics, so he's very good at math. Nyssa is also very good at math and just sciencey stuff in general. She's very well educated and very intelligent, also cute as a button. She's just adorable. Tegan is basically just the everyman who's kind of, well, woman, who's along for the ride and kind of out of her element and gives that kind of spunky attitude aspect of it as well. This was one of the things that John Nathan Turner started to introduce in his era, was he wanted to have more interesting companions. So we had Adric and Nissa, who were very smart, but Nissa was very level-headed. Adric was very hot-headed. You have Tegan, who also is very hot-headed, but resourceful and does her part when the chips are down. But so and a very large TARDIS crew, like probably the largest TARDIS crew I think ever. Because most of the time we would have, well, I guess the largest TARDIS crew since the original TARDIS crew, where we had 3 companions. You had Susan, Ian, and Barbara. And here, for the first time since the early days of the series, we have a full 3-person TARDIS crew once again. Previously, I think the most we'd had at any one time was 2, typically. Maybe very briefly 3, but usually it was when a companion was transitioning away and then new ones were being introduced, things like that. Like there was, again, back in the first Doctor's era, you had Ben, Polly, and Dodo very briefly, but then Dodo left, and it was just Ben and Polly. So really, it wasn't 3 for very long. But so this is really the first time since that era that we've had that large of a TARDIS crew, so it's pretty interesting. I should also mention this season is slightly longer than the previous batch of seasons. For the past several seasons, 26 episodes has been the norm. This one is actually 28. So instead of having a 6-parter to end off the season and having 6 stories, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 4-part stories. So we actually got 2 extra episodes for Tom Baker's final season, which I thought was quite nice, especially since his first season was slightly shorter. So it was good to have a full, good and proper send-off with a couple of bonus episodes for the 4th Doctor. This series also, compared to the relative lightheartedness of the past couple of seasons, this series is very serious. It's a serious series. One of the running themes of this season was one of entropy, of decay, and that it begins with the Leisure Hive, and you see elements of that throughout the other stories, finally culminating in the ultimate form in Logopolis. Not just the entropy and decay of the universe from the Masters meddling at Logopolis, but the entropy and decay of the Doctor's spirit and the Doctor's life, ultimately culminating in his death and regeneration. I should mention also, on a personal note, Logopolis was the first time I had ever seen a regeneration in Doctor Who. At that point in time, I had no idea that there were 3 previous Doctors. I just assumed that Tom Baker had always been the Doctor, and that was that. So to me, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't realize that we had just witnessed the end of an era, and that this new era was beginning with this new Doctor. I saw him regenerate, and Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor, sat up, and I just thought it was another cliffhanger. Like, oh my God, he turned into somebody else. What a crazy cliffhanger. And so I was wondering for a long time what was going to happen next. I just naturally thought that it would be, the next story would feature this younger actor for a little while, and then the conclusion of that story, or that maybe if it was a few stories tied together, at the end of it, Tom Baker would come back, and then things would resume as normal. But no, that's not the way it works, kids. That was the end of Tom Baker's era. He did his 7 years, and that was it. He was done. It was around that time that now you have to understand, we would get Doctor Who episodes here in North America quite late compared to when they would air in the UK. We would get them 1, sometimes 2 years after they aired in the UK, so we were way behind. So when I watched that, I was just kind of left hanging, and it was a long time before we actually got the next, the first batch of stories from the Fifth Doctor. So in that intervening time, I heard about the 20th anniversary coming out. So we had not received season 19 yet. But I heard about, or I think season 19 had just begun airing, and then the 20th anniversary was around the corner. So they started talking about that, and I remember reading an article. I think I mentioned this in Journey of a Whovian, my sort of initial Doctor Who video a while back. Check that out if you want to get sort of a little bit more about that. There was a story about the Five Doctors celebration coming up, like big anniversary story that they were going to do, and I was like, five Doctors, what? And they had some photos of them, and it just blew my mind. I was like, how much? So wait a minute, there's 3 Doctors before Tom Baker? How can I see those? And it wouldn't be until years later that I would actually get to see them when they brought them onto PBS, But that was when I first found out that it's not just a cliffhanger. It's a new Doctor. Well, I think by that time I knew it was a new Doctor, but I didn't know that there had been 3 prior to Tom Baker. So and then the first I remember sort of in the intervening time between seeing Logopolis and then this was showing on PBS. And then it just cycled back to Robot, Tom Baker's first story, because that's all they had at the time, was just the Tom Baker run. So it cycled back to Tom Baker's first story, and then I started watching all those again, and I think it may have been the first time I'd seen his first story, actually, that time. So it was pretty cool to go back to the beginning and see all the ones that I'd missed before. Because I just kind of seen some here, some there. I hadn't seen it consistently, or as consistently as I wanted. I'd still missed some here and there. And I remember there was a few months after Logopolis aired, there was a special on PBS called Once Upon a Timelord. I really, really want to find that special, because it's a significant part of my personal Doctor Who experience, and one that I would love to see again. And what Once Upon a Time Lord was a documentary all about Doctor Who fandom, and it took place primarily at a convention. I don't know if it was from it might have been the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, because they're sort of the big American fan group at the time. But anyway, it took place at a convention. It was talking about Doctor Who fans and showing fans dressing up and stuff like that. And one of the things they were talking about was the Fifth Doctor's adventures, and they had some clips of the Fifth Doctor's adventures. I remember hearing this one fan, it's like, yeah, we want to see the new guy. Come on, when are we going to get to see the new guy over here? So it had been a long delay between Tom Baker's last story and the first of Peter Davison. So, there was a lot of excitement about that, about seeing what this new guy was going to be like, and stuff like that. So I should mention, you can get to the last 2 stories of Tom Baker's era individually if you're a purist and want to sort of keep the Doctor's eras separate, kind of like how I did with the Lost in Time sets for the first and second Doctors. However, the way I got it was with this. It's actually a box set called New Beginnings, which contains all 3 stories of the trilogy that sends off the Fourth Doctor and introduces the Fifth. So we actually have the next story, which concludes the trilogy, Castrovalva, which introduces the Fifth Doctor. So if you really want, you can get this version, and it has, and this is just a standard box set of the 3 titles in a box. I had this before, sold it, and then reacquired it. I was debating whether or not to get them separately, and I thought, you know what, I'll just get the box again. That's fine. The box is cool. I like the box. So there you go. So we have story 110? Yes. So you got stories 110, 112. Oh, God, I can't count. 110, 111, 112, 13, and 14, 115, 116, and then the Fifth Doctor story, number 117. 17, which we will talk about next time. So we bid adieu to Tom Baker, and just like his last season was extra long, so has this Disambiguation been. I hope you enjoyed all of the little anecdotes I threw in there. Alrighty, that is it for this episode of the Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation, so we'll see you next time. Just like to take a quick moment to thank my Patreon sponsors. Thanks, Patreon sponsors. You guys and gals rock my socks. Especially Kyle Pellegrini and Get Your Gorgeous On, run by the EMAG, run by Michelle O'Toole and Simon Hedger, my two highest level sponsors. Big thanks to you guys. Really appreciate it. You're helping to make the magic happen. So please do consider becoming a Patreon sponsor, because every little bit helps and lets me to do more stuff like this. You know, there's some good English for you. I can good English speeching. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now. So until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Timey-Wimey Tuesday with the latest installment in my Doctor Who DVD. Yep.